Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited to be back with you all. Took a little break if you haven't listened to the last episode or the most recent one, but now I am back and I'm so excited to dive into this new kind of theme. I've invited a whole pile of fellow sex, love, relationship coaches and Tantra coaches and teachers to come on to really break down Tantra. So, for the next many episodes, we're going to really be playing with what is Tantra? And of course, I'm saying it in the Americanized word. Technically, if we're going to put it more in the Sanskrit word, is like Tantra. But what is Tantra and what are we playing with? And what does it mean? Because so many people out there are like, it's sex, right? And yes and no, actually. Tantra specifically only has, 8 to 10% of sexuality in it. It's not always sex and sexuality. There's so much more. And it has definitely been a big, big part of my healing journey and many of my other guests that are coming on's journeys as well. So today I have the beautiful Anne. Hello, Anne.
Hello, Kim. Thank you very much for having me.
You're so welcome. I'm so excited to have you. You call yourself a Tantric EduPreneur, which I think is so cool. So how did you come up with that? I actually want to hear that.
That's a good question. It's quite recent, but I just thought that I can't be listing all the things I do. I'm a multi-passionate woman, and
Mm.
I get so excited about different things. And recently, I've created an app and a platform and a community on there. And I thought, it's not really that I'm coaching people. I do coaching as well. I'm a men's sexuality and tantra coach. And I work with couples, so also relationships
Yeah.
coach. But I thought, since I'm creating courses and I'm a public speaker and I'm also I'm a mentor for our fellow newly graduates who are entering the men's sexuality coaching scene. So I've created a mastermind for them. So I said, I can't just list everything: a coach and a mentor
I
and a
know.
speaker and a course creator and all that. I said, okay, let's do educational entrepreneur. Again, too long. Let's call it edupreneur.
It's brilliant because I struggle with it all the time. I'm like
You're
sex,
very
love,
welcome
relationship,
to.
tantra, coach, teacher, speaker, author. And I'm like, there's
Yeah.
so much more, right? Because it's for
Yes,
singles
you're
and for
an author,
couples.
aren't you, as
It's
well? Yeah,
all
yeah,
of
yeah,
these
yeah,
things, right?
yeah.
So, okay. Yeah.
And
And
if you think about Tantra, it's about weaving things in, isn't it? So it's like kind of
Mhm.
you weave whatever you do, you weave Tantra in. It's like kind of becoming this experience. So whether you're an author, whether you're a speaker, whether you're a teacher or a coach or a mentor, it doesn't matter, but you're just, weaving it all in.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think that's the beauty of it all.
I do love that you brought the weaving in there. That's so brilliant. And yeah, the teacher has actually been resounding with me more recently because it seems to cover
Mm.
so many things. But since you brought it up and we already broke down the weaving, let's play with like what your definition of Tantra is. Let's break that down. Let's start right there because again, we're going to get so many different people's opinions on Tantra, and this might actually be a conversation more than actually a line or two. So don't worry.
Yeah, I think you saw my face. It's like kind of, the live, like will to live kind of faded out of me because it's a question I get a lot. And it's people have so many myths, don't they? It's about sex. It's about one of the things. It was very interesting. Last year, I was in a female entrepreneur course. It was like a EU project, and of course, it was a course of 3 months, and we also had a 3 week retreat, working retreat in Spain. And I was practicing my workshops, and I inviting all these women, to come to and there was a handful who came, and I was kind of, what's going on? And somebody said, well, maybe Anna, you should really check your assumptions. You think we know what tantra is, and I said, well, I've kind of said, haven't I? I said, no, you haven't. And would you like to know what I think about Tantra? And I said, yes, of course, please. Sorry. I just felt really bad that I assumed something that everybody knows what I know. I mean, why would I be a teacher if they did? And she said, Tantra for me means that my boyfriend is a cheating stud. And I was kind of, what do you mean?
What?
I felt so bad. And she said,
Oh.
in his way, this ex-boyfriend, clearly, introduced Tantra as a way of polyamory. And she's
Mm.
monogamist, serial monogamist. And I'm eternally grateful for her to actually, open, because I've lived in this tantric couple since, I don't know, 2016 or something, when I bought my first jade egg and started doing the Taoist practices. And she said, no, it's polyamory, it's about sex, it's cheating, just
Ah.
having sex with anybody you fancy. And I thought, oh my dear, it's not for
I'm
me.
so glad to hear that because I've never heard that definition either. I wonder how many other people out there are thinking that.
Well, hopefully you're not your listeners, for sure.
You just never know, right? Wow. Wow.
It was a big eye opener, and I started to think, okay, I need to be a bit more explicit about it. And
Mhm.
for me, it's a philosophy and it's a practice.
Mhm.
It's an
Mhm.
ancient practice and philosophy that now works really well with nervous system and more kind of modern neuroscience, and it kind of builds bridges for what my kind of nerdy self knows about science, and then what my kind of more spiritual self knows about spiritual development, and then what my very sexy self wants to know about sexuality. So it's kind of having
Mm.
all those things together.
Yes, I love that you brought that all together. And yeah, for me, if I'm going to break it down into some words,
Mm,
it's about connection, big time, connection to self, connection to source, connection to body, connection to a partner if you're going to practice um, partners. I also lead Tantra Speed Date locally too. So it's also about connection to whoever's in front of
lovely.
you. Might not even be a partner, right? It could be the date you're dating with. But connection to another human. At the same time, the connection to divine, connection to source, spirit, all of that within. And then also finding it within our own body at the same time. And what it's also allowed me to do, which also resonates very deeply, is that coming home, right? That coming home in your body, again, with the trauma aware lens that we both hold and have, and using that to heal the different pieces that are holding us back or have gotten stuck in a certain pattern or a certain way, and then using that to open up, to unlock, to free, using the tantric principles and philosophies to unlock and free those pieces of ourselves. So there's so much to tantra. It's connection. You can bring in some
Mm,
sexuality, you can bring it. So I think what the a nice breakdown is, you can bring the tantric principles and philosophies into sex, you can bring it into connection practices, you can bring it to communication practices, you can bring it into your own self. You can There's so many different ways that we can literally use the tantric principles and practices. What else is coming up for you around that?
well, I really like that, because when I started my podcast, my first episode was "What is Tantra?" And I just went on a rant saying, I have no clue. I don't understand mantras and yantras and all this Sanskrit stuff, and all the gurus. I'm not a guru, and all that. And in the end, I can't remember, that's now a year and a half ago, but I said that I think my conclusion was that it is that philosophy. It is the philosophy of oneness. There's consciousness in everything.
Mm,
We are more than just our body and mind and emotions. We're the consciousness, but also this body and this world is real, which I find that lots of spiritual practices actually bypass. And it kind of makes me feel good that whatever I sense and feel in my body, it is valid and it's true. Nobody's trying to take it away when we talk about tantra. And the other thing is that kind of practice as well, where I started healing my own sexual trauma, sexual abuse as a child, and having been quite sexual, I think, in my youth, but always felt that sex itself was too overrated. And since then, I've learned that I'm very energetic in my sexual blueprint, or my erotic blueprint, that it's more kind of anticipation. It's, I can have an orgasm from afar, without touching myself. And that was 10 years ago. And it spooked me
Mm-hmm.
out driving a
Mm.
car. And then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, oh, it felt like somebody was, I don't know how explicit I can be. But anyway, maybe I'll leave
Absolutely,
it to
fully
that.
explicit. You can say and do, I say and do whatever is real on here. There is no filtering whatsoever on this podcast.
Oh, thank goodness for that. I really think that we should be able to talk more about these things. And as a Finnish woman, I grew up in a culture which is very liberal, very equal, where we talked about sexuality and sex openly. And obviously the sauna culture is something that we learn to see naked bodies, and it's okay for us. So having since lived abroad, it's especially in very Victorian and Puritan England, it's been very interesting to kind of understand how many myths and misunderstandings just about sex and love and relationships and genders there are. And what I love
Mm-hmm.
about Tantra is that it doesn't judge.
I think
It
that's
doesn't
huge.
judge.
There's no judgment. There's no shame. One of the biggest things I love, which is then there's nothing to fix within us. Like we
Absolutely,
are
yes.
perfect at our core. Everything that is underneath who we are is perfect. Even if we're
Yeah.
having thoughts about one thing or another, that is one of the biggest philosophies of, there's nothing to fix, right? And it's bringing in that
Mm,
love and that compassion. That's the other thing is love. Like Tantra to me is also about love, full
mm,
heart opening, unjudgmental, like not shameful, like full open to full approval love for everything you do, everything you say, everything you feel, everything that comes out of you, whether that's, in a sexual experience or you're yelling at your partner, like, give yourself a moment to come into compassion and love for, of course, you were triggered for that moment. Doesn't mean we go ahead and yell at our partners, right? But again, what we can get stuck into is that judgmental pattern of, oh my gosh, see, I'm doing it again. There's something wrong with me. I'm, broken. What is going on? And not loving ourselves. So instead, we're bringing into the philosophy of really truly loving and accepting ourselves for who we are at the moment, even the parts of us that we don't like, the parts of us that we've been shamed or dismissed or discouraged from years of culture, right? Of being raised
yeah.
as women or being raised as humans in this culture. And just really going back home into our body and creating that safety by reconnecting to our body, reconnecting to who
Mm.
we are, and just really bringing in approval and love and compassion. Those are the big, big things, along with the connecting for me.
Definitely. And one of the things that I did just last month in France, where I lived for 6 months, I I did a retreat, which was actually called the Art of Connection. And it was
Mm,
kind of a beginner's Tantra retreat for couples. And what I was really intrigued by was that, and it was, there were same-sex people, couples, but also heterosexual couples. But what was really beautiful was that when you start with the connection, it's actually very scary. People
mm,
find, they're kind of measuring each other in a new group, and they're kind of looking, okay, what's happening here? Is that person safe? Oh, those couples are now clicking, they're having a click, we will feel outsiders. It was a very multinational group as well. But and I don't know where this came, but I had planned something else as a first exercise. And then when they came into the space, which I called a sacred temple, and it was our place where we did all the workshops, um, they came. It was in a chateau, so it was a beautiful, beautiful French castle. So when they came into the barn, which was our sacred temple, the first exercise I did was to ask them. I put some music on and asked them to walk around the space and stop when I asked them to stop, whoever was in front of them, and to do one of the most beautiful connection exercises in Tantra, which is eye gazing, and eye gazing with a stranger. And it was
mm,
just unbelievable. I could just see the body language when I saw that the couple, obviously didn't know each other. They stopped and started looking each other in the eyes. all of a sudden I could see that one of them sighed and then the other one sighed as well. So the co-regulation happened, and it kind of, and then, they were raving about it afterwards. All those, 3 days, they were saying that set the scene. It was truly connecting. I truly saw that you're
Yeah.
not scary. I truly saw that you're same as me. I
That you're
truly saw that we are
human.
together. Exactly. And there were
Yeah.
different races, different cultures all around the world. So it was very fascinating to see that such a simple thing. We are afraid of looking strangers in the eye, don't we? We
Hmm.
kind of avoid, at least in a London tube, nobody, dares to. It's only a Finnish person who stares everybody in the eyes, and, everybody else just tries to keep their privacy and not look. It's so important. If you don't see somebody, if you don't really look, and obviously when we took it to the
Yeah.
couples level, it was so beautiful. People were crying. Can you
Yeah.
believe such a simple, well, of course, you have experience yourself,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But I get it because I can look at the old me, like 8 years ago, where we did this simple practice in a Mamagina room, and I couldn't do it. I literally
really.
could not look another woman in the eyes. It was so uncomfortable for me. So
Why
uncomfortable for
was
me.
that? What do you
I think it goes back to past trauma. I think it
Yeah.
goes back to really not being comfortable with who I was, really not connecting to my source, really going through the world people pleasing, showing up and being the good mom, the good girl, the good woman. And I was so uncomfortable, probably I'm thinking, if I look back with myself, that there was no way I even wanted to be seen on that level. I wanted to hide, right? I was trying to just
Yeah.
be something that was deemed good enough, right? Show up
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
and perform. And if you really think about it, like if you're going to slow down an eye gaze like that, which I love, like that's something that I practice
Mm.
almost every single day now. Like there isn't a sexual experience that goes by where there isn't eye gazing with my partner and I. Like it's just beautiful. And I can do it with friends and women and other circles
Yeah.
and other tantra retreats or anything else like that. But I wonder, honestly, if I didn't even want to look at myself. So, how could I allow somebody else to look at me that intently, right? Something like
Yeah.
that. Something
It makes sense.
really being seen for who I was because I wasn't willing to see myself for who I was.
That's so true. And actually, when you look somebody in the eye, they do say that their left eye is the portal to your soul. So if you're not
Mm,
accepting yourself
hmm.
as you are, and then somebody actually looks you in the left eye, it's like, oh,
Yeah,
ooh, holy,
yeah. Yeah,
scary.
it's and I can concur with that. Like there is such a deep soul level hit when you bring eye gazing into a sexual experience. Here we are talking about Tantra is not all about sex, and it's not. And
Mm.
when you can bring eye
Yeah.
gazing into making love with your partner or whoever that may be, there is such yeah, you can see their soul. You can literally see and feel and connect at a soul level that is just out of this world, out of this world. It's
It's very
absolutely
emotional,
beautiful.
isn't it? Isn't it? It's
Oh,
very emotional.
it's
So you need to be well regulated and you need to feel safe
mhm,
in the space. And I
mhm,
think
mhm,
um, I I remember doing a workshop in England a few years ago, and there was this young lady who said that I've I when I make love with my partner, I can never look him in the eye. And that was
mhm,
the first time when I started to think, oh, there's something in this eye gazing thing that I need to really um, go
mhm.
deeper. And it's such a beautiful, such a simple practice, but it's so difficult if you don't do it correctly.
It can be, and at the same time, with my ex, I could not with him. And I'm
Right?
curious, I would never know now, but I'm curious if I could have, 15, 20 years ago. Maybe, but maybe not. And I'm curious then is it depending on, again, that safety? Have you created enough
Yeah.
safety with your partner, with yourself, with each other? Are you open? Are you connecting in communication? Are
Mm.
you, creating intimacy? Are you creating trust, safety, deepening into intimacy? And I think that is what has allowed me to fully do it in partner relationship do it as in eye gazing. That's the part that, yeah, it just wasn't safe enough to do any other way
Yeah.
beforehand.
So
Yeah,
is it, I'm really curious, was it more like that you created safety in yourself first?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's what
Because
I kind
if
of
I look
heard.
back 8 years ago, I
Yeah.
couldn't even do eye gazing with women in a women's circle. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so uncomfortable. Now, I will speak to something that I also learned that this can, and I don't know where this is going to fall in there, but people who do also hold a lot of trauma and a lot of sexual trauma will struggle with eye gazing generally until they've healed that. And I hadn't healed that at that point. So it could also be a piece of that. And there's another way, a nicer way that it can be a little more softening to the nervous system to just look at one eye instead of both eyes, which is something you can do if it is really uncomfortable in a group circle or even with a partner, is just do one eye to one eye. It's just a little softening kind of thing where you can just kind of still have one in and one out. It's a way to titrate and to slowly create some safety and some eye gazing. And yeah, that's just one of the most beautiful practices, I think, out of the tantric principles and philosophies and practices to play with. And as I shared, I do teach this one in Tantra Speed Date. I don't remember if I said that on air or before air, but it is such a beautiful way. And some people, most people actually absolutely love it and they've never done it before. And
Mm.
then other people giggle the whole time, and I have to try and hold the room because they're so nervous and so uncomfortable. And of course, I can hold space for that because that was me years ago too. So I get it.
Mm.
I get it.
I'm really sorry that you have gone through sexual trauma. It is something that I think is quite surprisingly common,
It
and
is.
it takes a long, long time to recover for sure,
It
and
is.
learn to rewire the new pathways in your nervous system to actually start enjoying again and not kind of push through things that you think you should be doing or shouldn't be
Mm,
doing, or shutting yourself down, or it's uh it's very exhausting
It
unless you
is.
learn.
It
And that's what
absolutely is.
I think one of the things I learned, I divorced 10 years ago, and one of the things I learned, I came out from a sexless marriage, and it was my choice, and I thought, goodness, you know, I also happened to burn out at the same time. I was doing too much. I was a high flying politician. I was a CEO of a family business, and it kind of all just crashed exactly 10 years ago. So May 10 years ago, at this time, I felt like I never got out of bed until Christmas. So from May to
Wow.
Christmas, it just went on. And when the kids went to school, I went to bed. I was so exhausted. It was just like my whole nervous system had frizzled out. And I'd been
Mm,
going on adrenaline for too long. And it's interesting that that's when the healing started. And I really did it quite consciously. I allowed myself to just flop on the bed, but then I realized that no, this is too hard. Healing is too hard on its own, and that's when I started to get really curious about pleasure. Little by little, that respite. Kind of, okay, I'm not in pain. I'm not in this numbness. I'm not in this darkness and this depression. I'm not in this feeling ashamed and useless. And when that kind of started lifting, I realized that actually a little bit what you said about titrating. For me, it was like kind of, yeah, I can do a little bit of healing and being on that path, but I also need some pleasure and happiness and joy,
yes.
because otherwise it's getting too much.
It's too
And that's when
much.
I learned the Jade practice from Taoist
Mm,
tantric tradition. And what I love about it is that it is actually a spiritual practice. And in those times, my Kundalini started to awake, and there were lots of interesting phenomena, and which I can't explain with my logical mind. But what I learned about Tantra is that it was done. It was created 3 to 5 thousand years ago for people, ordinary
mm,
people like you and I, who have responsibilities, who need to live in this real world with maybe children and family responsibilities, but definitely working and earning a living and maybe being an entrepreneur. And it was created as a spiritual practice, as an enlightenment practice. And because people in those days, they were very holistic, they didn't put, okay, let's put the sex in the Saturday night box, and let's put the religion in the Sunday box, Sunday morning box, or whatever. So it's like they saw everything as a holistic way, and they understood
Yeah.
with this inner technology of energy centers and meridians. They understood that sexual energy is also creative energy and also your spiritual energy. And this is when
Mm-hmm.
it started to get really interesting to me. And I thought, wow, if I can just create pleasure in my body or with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and I can get enlightened like this, you know,
You can
what's
hold
not to
everything
like?
else.
What's
Exactly.
not to like? And it was
Yeah.
those, as I said, those two pathways, the healing and the pleasure, that
Mm-hmm.
really got me going.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I wanted to train as a tantra coach,
Yeah. It's
and that's
so
where we met.
interesting. It's interesting. We've talked before, but we haven't talked about this. So, one of my first ways into my healing after a very big burnout as well was through pleasure, right? That was the first way I came into pleasure. And then I actually came into the jade egg as well, the Taoist practice, and started that way. And that's how I started with Layla way back when, who was both of our
Oh,
mentors as well. So, very similar. And yet, yes, when you start to play with Tantra through every single piece of your life and start to play with it in the spiritual and in this sexual and sacred sexuality, but also in this pleasure based on an everyday pleasure, not just sexual pleasure, everyday
yeah,
pleasure. How can you weave it in this
yeah,
pleasure of what you like with the spirituality and then weaving in the chakras? And again, it's getting to know your body and really aligning with your truth and with your power and with what you're here to do, whether that's raising kids and or so much, more, depending if you're a
yeah,
woman listening, right? But there's so much that we can use this tantric philosophy and principles to weave
yeah.
into and create the life that we want to live with, again, such approval and such compassion and such love and connection. It's so hard to break down what tantra is, isn't it?
I think it's because it's experiential, isn't it? It's
It
like we
is.
can read, definitions from books and the theory and all that. But once you start experiencing it, I think it becomes more difficult to actually explain in words, and words are
Yeah.
mediocre at the best. In
Yeah.
in I was just I'm dating at the moment, and I met this amazing man, and we've been, and he's clearly very energetic. I can feel his energy most of the time when we feel connected. And he was asking about tantra and asking about all this, and I said, I think because I can sense your energy, and I can
Yep.
sense it's there. You
Yep.
don't, it's, and I think men have been conditioned as a men's sexuality coach. I think I have so much love for men, even though I was abused as a 6-year-old by a man twice, but I've worked on that.
Mhm.
Um, and but I love men, and I think men are missing out so much
I
because
agree.
women are going through, there's, yes, there's all these resources, all these things available, and JDEG practice, and men think, okay, tantra means the slow boring sex, it's too vanilla or whatever, and or I'm not Sting, I can't do it for 7 hours, and
Mhm.
it's all these myths people have. But when you start experiencing, and you really you're using your intentionality, you really have an intention, and you use holistic tantric sex tools, which you said earlier, you can use them in your daily life. You can bring those, whether it's breath work and sounding and movement and energy work, and it's just so amazing when you start practicing those, and don't
Mhm.
have kind of preconceived ideas, or what is it that needs to happen. And there's so many men have been abused as well, but
Mhm.
also they have been traumatized by patriarchy a lot,
Mhm.
creating this kind of myth of what is masculinity,
Mhm.
and
Absolutely.
what is a man, what is a real man, who needs to suppress his fears and anxieties and tears, and we have so much burning out men, conscious loving good men,
Yeah.
and they're so lost at the moment because of
Which
Me
makes
Too
us
movement.
lost. It's both
Yeah,
and. We need the
yeah,
masculine. If we
yeah,
do not have that sacred masculine, we cannot surrender into our full feminine.
Yeah, and I think it's also a play. I think we need to have more play, with
Yes, to
our inner
play.
masculine, and also allowing the men to have their inner feminine to come
Absolutely.
forward and be in that energy flow and in that sensuality as well. And so
The
it's,
weaving, the
yeah.
weaving of it
Oh,
all.
we go back to
I
that all
like
the time.
I like to think of it as an infinity loop too.
Yeah,
Right? We're
yeah,
infinity. We've got, we're swinging the energies
yeah,
between,
yeah,
at
yeah,
least I feel that with me and my partner. We're swinging the energies, and sometimes I'm supporting him more, and sometimes he's supporting me more, right? But also in the play, in the energies,
yeah,
you can play with it all, the connecting, the intimacy, the
yeah,
kundalini, whatever it may be. But I will second that, you know, my partner has never received any tantric training, but it's just naturally in him. He
yeah, yeah, yeah.
knows. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I wouldn't be with you if you weren't. Like, the way you're showing up is
Exactly.
what I am attracted to." And it is already in there, the energetic, the dance, the weaving
With the
is already
dance,
in
yeah.
there. And it's
That's
so
true. That
beautiful.
is so true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, we could go on for hours and hours and hours, and maybe we'll just have to have another one. But I would love to know, to summarize here, maybe it might take a couple sentences though. What has Tantra done for you?
Oh, it's definitely healed me.
Mm.
I did a lot of sexual healing with through tantric practices. It was very hard actually. The year that we did the basic training. It's also giving me courage, and
Mm.
I'm traveling full time, so I'm independent. What's it called now? I can't call myself digital nomad apparently because I'm not under 35. So I'm
Oh, bullshit. Okay, I never knew about that one.
yeah,
Eh.
apparently. So I'm location independent.
Oh, I think you're still a digital nomad. I'm sorry. That does not get qualified to the day you
So
turn
it's
35,
given
and
me,
that's it.
Tantra has given me a beautiful community, beautiful
Mm.
colleagues, beautiful
Hmm.
business. I weave in live retreats in beautiful locations. That's my vision, and also my online practice and
Hmm.
business. And I am envisioning now a partner as well. So
Mm, beautiful.
it's to have a tantric partner would be absolutely delicious.
Delicious. Yes. I love that you mentioned that Tantra has brought you in this community, because
Mm,
yes, that one's huge. And I hadn't actually put that on my list, but yes, it's brought in a conscious, awake community that is compassionate, that is
mm,
open, that is willing to learn, that is willing to repair if there's
yeah,
any issues. That is definitely a big part of what Tantra has done for me as well. And the healing, the sexual healing, healing from
yeah.
sexual trauma, as well as healing from patriarchal conditioning that is put on
Mm,
women and put on us mothers and wives and all of these different things. And just so much, again, compassion and approval and acceptance, and actually dropping into my power and seeing who I am and what I'm here to do and what I'm called for, and learning how to trust my body. Oh my gosh, learning how to trust my intuition, trust my body, trust my witchiness, all of that, of just really coming home. That's why I like to summarize it into really coming home to who I am, remembering
yeah,
who I
that's
am.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Can I add one more?
Please. I think there's so much. So please keep adding.
This goes back into my kind of times when I thought I can change the world, and
Mm,
through politics, through conscious entrepreneurship and all that, just before I burned out. And I realized that I can only change myself. And when I change
mm.
myself, others change as well around me, because it
Yes.
changes that energetic dynamic within a family, within even ancestry lines and so on. And one of the things that when I burned out, I felt that I let everybody down in my community, whether it was a political community, whether it was the social enterprise community. And I now have more hope for humanity and
Hmm.
for this planet, because if we can get, and that's why I trained as a men's sexuality coach, I really wanted to have that as well as Tantra as my majors. It's because I know women can support each other. Men don't tend to support each other. And there is a question whether a woman can be a man's coach, or whether women, and this is something that in my mastermind for female men's sexuality coaches, we discuss a lot and feel into this. What does it mean for a woman to hold space for men? And how, is there really, because we've heard this, I don't know if you heard this, man and a bear in the
Yes, I
woods.
have heard it a little bit. Yes, which
Yeah,
is
so
hard.
so it's very hard for conscious men to accept that they're considered more dangerous to a female in the woods than a bear. And I can understand that as a sexual abuse victim or survivor, I would say now. But if we don't help men to actually learn and heal their own trauma and their own patriarchal conditioning, we will have more rapes, we will have more wars.
Hmm.
And this is quite harsh. And I do apologize for some of your your male listeners who feel that that's not me, but it works at the impulse, very primitive level, which is being that protector, which is being that caveman, which is supporting your tribe, you know continuing the line of the tribe, and so on and so on. So it's very instinctive and primitive, and now the
Yeah.
society is asking them to suppress it. However, what if we don't have to suppress it? Because when you suppress something, it becomes uncontrollable when it kind of gets let out, when you least want it. And then harsh things and violent and dangerous things happen. So, what if that is not the case and we can actually help
Yeah. What if we
men
heal
to
it
heal?
instead?
Exactly, and integrate it and actually give tools. So it's that, for me, Tantra is tools. It's about
Hmm.
the intention and it's the tools. What are the tools like breath work? How can you safely work with your body and your mind to actually release things, whether it's anger, whether it's tears. I've noticed that men are very afraid of crying, and women are very afraid of releasing their anger. So there is a lot
Mm-hmm.
of work that we need to do. So for me, what Tantra has, it's a very long answer, but one of the things is societal change, and it is also
Yeah.
environmental change. That Tantra gives me hope that if we can work with men without putting any judgment, helping, giving them tools to deal with those primitive urges without them needing to suppress and control them, how beautiful this world would be.
Yeah. Absolutely. You said that so beautifully. And yes, there's so much chaos and wars and stuff going on in society across the world, right? And it can be so, so disheartening and so heartbreaking. And yet, when we can turn inwards instead and do the work on ourselves, we are actually raising the vibration and changing collectively. And you said that from
Mm.
the very beginning. That is the work. And it doesn't always have to be hard either. My journey
It could be
specifically
fun.
wasn't hard. It actually was very fun. Sure, there was hard moments, but I trusted my container I'd set around me of women that I was working with, and I leaned into it and I leaned in hard. And they held me when it was really hard, right? And that itself was very healing. And to do that work as women, to do that work as men and non-binaries across the world, it is deeply, deeply healing. We can change the world with this work, this awakening, this consciousness, this approval, this love, this compassion. It is what we greatly, greatly need. I could not agree anymore.
Yeah, and Tantra, brings another ingredient to the sexual smorgasbord, for that
Exactly.
buffet of, erotic
Exactly.
experiencing as well. So there's lots of fun to be had with Tantra.
Yeah. Oh, tons and tons and tons. Oh, thank you so, so much. This has been a beautiful share. I'm excited to see this go live and to see what comes out of it and people's comments and so forth. I also love you to share where people can find more of you.
Right. because of my burnout, I started to call myself a selfishly happy woman. And when I healed, I decided that no, this is my gift to the world. So my website is called selfishlyhappyu.com.
Hmm.
And I think most of my social media is selfishly happy with Annebland. So yeah, I'm always
Beautiful.
happy to discuss and go on calls and also have a podcast called Tantric Sex for Lovers and Others.
Ah, love it. Perfect. Well, we're going to drop all the links in the show notes as well. And thank you so, so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. You gave
You're
me
so
so much
welcome.
hope and joy. Thank you.
Aw, so glad. So, so glad. Till next time, everyone.